Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County, Tennessee, with my best buddy, Rodney Wilds, who is a loan officer with First Bank, also in Williamson County, Tennessee. We're here just to chit-chat back and forth, talk about the market, and tell you what's going on in our world. So hopefully you can learn something from that. If you got questions, give us a call. Our information is easy to find. Hi, Rodney.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I just I just like pushing through that intro, and get to the meat and show people my very cool mug here.
Yeah. Was that get lost in what you love?
That's pretty much it, yes.
I need to get me one. Something says like low down payments or something.
No down payments would get more
Yeah.
traction.
Yeah. No doubt.
The reason because I'm a musician as well, and the reason I like this so much is it kind of fills all my different categories. If it's real estate, great. If it's music, I'm in. So, hey, what's up with what the is going on with the rates? Oh,
Yeah. We've been
they're
trying to get a
low.
little bit better.
I mean, didn't I? Let me look at something. They're like, I know I mention this every time, but I'm not going to stop now. I use Mortgage News Daily to find the rates in general, and it's like that's the blanket one. And if you were to go through Rodney, chances are good he would be able to do much better than them, but still they have a number that I can compare to. And I'm seeing 667 as opposed to a little bit smidge over 7. Is that what's going on with that? What
Hey,
why?
we've had several weeks in a row that's been pretty good. We're still bumping up against a pretty good ceiling right now, but right now it's seems to be going our way in the rate department.
In the midst of all the stuff, we always talk about this, and we've got some very cool articles. The theme of today's show is affordability is gaining traction. That's the theme. So if you're a home buyer, this show's got is for you. And I've got real life, real world stories that probably run up against as we go through this story, as we go through the show. But affordability, and if you're a home seller, it's hang on. It's gonna be fine. So, but what we're trying to get into is in the midst of all the stuff that's going on financially, and I mean, let's just say it out loud, with tariffs and all the stuff, with all the uncertainty, the market, the economy hates uncertainty. Wouldn't you agree with that, Rodney?
I would, but it seems like, the stock market's doing really good. Everything but mortgage rates is seem to be holding everything back. So, in my opinion, that's still the biggest factor that's you know put our housing as our thing says, put it in absolute dumps. Our real estate market.
Yeah, and it's okay. And remember now, for anybody that's new to the real estate business, and how that goes on, our business moves pretty slow. I mean, we don't recognize a trend until 3 months after it's happened. I mean, it's saying it's in the dumps. Well, that's kind of old news a little bit. Now, all this information I've gotten is recent. It's just within the last couple of days, but it's just that the housing market, and it's such a big part of the economy, it's just slow to respond. I mean, buying a house, selling a house, those are not usually decisions that you make overnight until you're in the process. Once you're in the process, it's a different story. You people pull the trigger instantly, when they're buying houses, this is the one. So
Yeah.
anyway, my point is we're in the midst of change. The market seems to be stabilized in the midst of uncertainty. I mean, but still things are acting pretty solid. I'm real pleased with it. And I happen to be one of the people, just like Rodney, that when we talk about these stories about prices and how they adjust and how listing prices are too high and sellers are negotiable and that kind of stuff, we're the guys that actually create that by going out. When the rubber meets the road is when you are writing contracts and talking to other human beings about what they will accept, buyer and seller. Remember, the value of a home, the market value of a home is whatever a seller will sell for and a buyer will agree to. That's the market value. And you can do comps until your brains fall out. And if they choose differently, there's your actual comps. So let's dig into this a little bit, shall we? The housing market is in the absolute dumps, and this is by Axios. That is a publisher that I like these guys because they don't lean one way or the other politically, in my opinion. They don't. At least they don't show themselves. But even as the stock market approaches an all-time high, and it's up again today, there's a big dark cloud hovering over the economy. The housing market couldn't be more true. By the numbers, pending home sales, deals that are in contract but not yet closed, rose 1.8% in May over last month, but are still at record lows per data from the National Association of Realtors released Thursday. The only other time over the past 20 years that pending home sales have been this low was in 2020, when COVID briefly froze the real estate market. Do you remember that, Rodney?
Yes.
Do you remember when they said no more touring of homes? You can't talk to anybody. You had to start putting signs on the front door that said you have to wear a mask or you can't come in. And people started buying homes sight unseen because they were going to walk through somebody else's germy house. That was literally, I mean, talk about, I'll never forget sitting there going, what? We have to stay home for 2 weeks? Jeez. Anyway, that was quite a time. Other indicators are flashing terrible too. Existing home sales fell year over year in May to their slowest pace in 2009. That's a big deal. When home sales are this slow since 2009, in the midst of the crash, I'm going to just call it that for lack of a better term, call it correction, whatever you want, that's pretty slow. Home prices are now rising at their slowest annual pace in 2 years per Case-Shiller. Case-Shiller, of course, keeps tracks of resale homes and how they do in the market. Not new homes, but resale homes. That's what Case-Shiller does. Housing starts or new homes beginning construction dropped nearly 10% in May, the weakest since May of 2020, a sign that home builders are losing confidence in the economy. That's a big deal. That's a big deal, wouldn't you say, Ronnie?
Yeah, those numbers are pretty big, since 2009. This is 2025. And
Yeah.
even going back just to 5 years, that's a lot of market, a lot of market time. So, yeah, it's definitely hitting the range where it's, I wouldn't say concerning. I'm saying that it's kind of still building. I would say this market's kind of building up for when the rates release a little bit, and a lot of this pent up demand is going to come, going to start working itself out.
And the thing that's interesting, I'll continue this and then flesh a couple of things out. So even so, the news about a slight increase in pending sales cheered sad realtors, which they're out there. I'm telling you, and I always tell you this story every week because this is real world as far as I'm concerned. When I tell you about the Facebook realtor groups that I'm a part of, and this isn't not my company or anything, just in general across the country, the questions that people are having, realtors, like they'll ask, what is going on? Is everybody else as slow as I am in this part of the country? And some areas are slow, some are not quite so slow. But when it talks about sad realtors, there's a bunch of them. And here's the other thing. With the realtors that are now in business, that are 3 or 4 years along in their business, came along when selling a house was no more difficult than putting the cardboard sign in the yard, and I'm not knocking them. I'm sure they're the highest quality, but the effort to sell a home in the last few years, I'm going to accept that last year, meaning to 1 year ago in June, was relatively straightforward. Back in 2009, when Rodney and I, he was 20 years into it by then, but I was only maybe just 5 or 6. But it was the crash, and we had to sell houses. There's a difference. There was a difference then, and so that's where a lot of I see the responses that realtors have, and you can tell it's like, and I'm not making fun of them. It's kind of a wake up call. Wait, what? This is what selling houses are really like, Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
this is it, And the thing, here's the thing. I'm gonna say this and I'll move on. I get caught up in this loop. A lot of times, realtors are sold on the idea, not the fact, the idea that when you're selling a house, you have a bigger sign and you have more drone footage and you have more tours and you have more bling and you have more splash and all that kind of stuff. That's what sells a house. Well, they're finding out right now that ain't it. Because video tours, that's all the rage now, and they are the highest quality. They're pulling up on movie quality. Does that sell houses? It does not. There's 3 things that sell houses: foot traffic, condition, and price. And that's it. And and that's why old schoolers like me is like, hey, make your videos, go ahead. It costs you a bunch, I'll stop. You can do this anytime, Rodney. I can see you over there. The bottom line in home sales appears to be over, with the possibility of a strong upswing once mortgage rates decline. I agree. Lawrence Yun, the NAR chief economist, says, though he cautioned that the market is seeing higher than normal cancellation rates, and that's my last article today, and that last minute cold feet. In other words, even the little bit of good news comes with a big caveat. And it does. I mean, whenever people start talking about rates, the comments on those Facebook groups, they just blow up. We're going to make it. It's going to be okay. Rodney, I got a question for you. What's the conversation these days about who's the Fed chief? Jay?
Jerome Powell.
Yeah. There's some pushback. There's back and forth with him, and Trump's kind of always been trying to kick him out and kind of that kind of stuff. Do you see what do you think is he going to actually lower rates, do you think?
I think he is. I think when you see I think the inflation target has been their number one goal, and it's just above 2%.
Yeah.
But I think if the housing, the jobs, people are starting to lose confidence in jobs, job security, and that sort of thing. I think if that continues to happen, he's definitely going to do it. But I think he's going to do it either way. I think there's been several other voting chair persons that's openly spoke about reducing the rate and things like that. So I know he was steadfast last time, but I think in the upcoming months he will be lowering them.
The reason I bring that up, because here's the way I see this. As the housing market is in the dumps and that kind of stuff, I think that's a little bit extreme, but the numbers indicate that. Here's what you got to realize in the housing market. You don't have to, but what I've learned over a couple of decades is we're almost into July. We're deep. We're easily a third or more into the selling season, and the selling season didn't happen this year. We're talking about the dumps, and it's the end of June. No, it's the 1st of July. The dumps, and this should be our time to make hay, kind of a thing. And what you got to remember is this market moves so slow by comparison that before long, it's going to be September. We're going to be still crunching these numbers. And when September hits, that's when you start, I'm telling you, you start talking about October and Halloween. And when Halloween enters the discussion, it's you're 2 minutes away from Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's how we just don't have that much of the season left. So if there's changes coming, and I think that I would be safe to say, you tell me if I'm wrong, that Powell has shown real conservative stripes through this whole thing. I mean, that guy, despite the pressure he's been under, he holds steady. He's not, if he dropped it too much, we could see this market shift in a heartbeat because all of that pent up demand would show up. Does that make sense? Or am I just
Yeah,
making?
I don't think we would like for what he does. I think the mortgage rates have to come down again another full percentage point. And then
Mm-hmm.
if let's say if something happened and they were to go down a full point in December, I don't care if it was Christmas. It would be our busy time would be Christmas if that
Yep.
was to happen. Um,
I have to
you
agree.
know the crazy thing about our business is that we have seasons that you can kind of look at, but for 9 out of 10 years we could have a weird season where it's busy in the winter. It's done that to us several times, so it's really no season. I see this thing kind of breaking loose as soon as they start lowering the mortgage rates, which it would follow the Fed funds rate, but it would, that's when I see it kind of kicking off. Because you see just that little bitty, we'll talk about it later, but that little bitty change in interest and, prices going down 1% or so has helped affordability. Um, there's all these factors are going together. This is what, helping affordability looks like. A bad market to hurt, to keep our prices down or level or however you want to call it.
Yeah.
We need rates to get better. And then you have some options with negotiations, so this is it's the downside of all this is our affordability problem is minusculely getting better. I know it's not much, but it is getting better a little bit.
Yeah, and I apologize if I made the jump from the Fed funds rate, Jay Powell, to the mortgage rates, but I so connect that in my head. They're not connected, but ultimately,
They are
it,
connected, but technically not, but they are. I mean, they
right.
follow. You know,
And I didn't mean to make that jump, but nonetheless I
yeah.
did. So I apologize about that. But the reason I bring that up is that, and it's what is exactly what you said. If we were to drop a point,
Yeah.
different rules. We could scrap today's show and start over with, "Hey, it's a hot buyer market."
Yeah, it would be fun.
Just to finish up this article, and then we'll move on. It's less about mortgage rates and more about the economic certainty. I couldn't agree with more. The John Burns Real Estate. If you've never looked those guys up, they are very cool. John Burns is pretty cool. The intrigue. There's a new. I thought this was an interesting comment that I noted. There's a new kind of golden handcuff holding back the market. Sellers are chained to their inflated home values. Many have seen Zestimates raised by 50% or more since 2020. What struck me funny is Zestimate is kind of famous for being way off.
Yeah.
And for those, and I'm telling you, but that doesn't mean people don't believe it. You show me a seller that is a Zillow fan, part of it is because they're looking at that. But look at my Zestimate.
Yeah.
I'm a millionaire. Wait a minute, it was only worth 400 last year. What's going on? Anyway, so between the lines, as home builders contend with freezing sales, and we've got a yeah. In a recent survey of home builders conducted by Zonda, some companies reported that the immigration enforcement policy, just got to bring it up because real estate reality is starting to visit job sites. Is that going to slow down some construction? I got news for you. There's exceptions being made in Washington as we speak, on different categories of folks that can get pulled. So, and I'm not making fun of it. We're just, there's a practical side to that particular situation. So the bottom line is the housing industry is already riddled with challenges, and I don't think we realized how many more we're going to face. And that is pretty much the truth. I've got, I had a couple of thoughts. I'll save them. Any final thoughts as we close out of that particular article, Rod?
No, this actually kind of reminds me of what we always do when we're a little slower. You know, we get in there, we analyze everything, and we watch the numbers come in and go and talk about this. But you know, if those rates were to go down, all we'd be talking about is how busy we would be. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, it's 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 the vicious cycle is when you're not too busy, you get to talk about all this stuff.
That's really true. You overthink the heck out of it. And I happen, if I had a superpower, overthinking would be mine. So uh, I say that it's time for this.
All right.
Okay, and I forgot which FHA loan is really the best. Is that the one you
FHA
wrote?
loan.
Yep.
Yes.
Bear with me here. Come on. There we go. Takes a second to put it together. Bang. There's that. There's this. Ha! Done. Got it.
All right. Let's get into the riff. All right. Another first time home buyer put an article on Reddit just a couple days ago. We're going to kind of go through it here. The title is an FHA loan really the best choice for a first time home buyer like me? Hey everyone, I'm new to this whole home buying thing and I kept hearing about FHA loans. Honestly, I don't really understand all the benefits and downsides. I've been saving up and trying to figure out if FHA loan is the way to go for a first time home buyer like me. My credit isn't perfect, and I've heard FHA loans are more forgiving, but I also worry about the mortgage insurance and overall cost. I've seen some posts mentioning FHA loans as a good starting point for first-time home buyers, but I'd love to hear your real experiences. Did you guys use an FHA loan? Was it a good decision? Are there better options if your credit isn't perfect? I want to make sure I'm not shooting myself in the foot early on. Thanks in advance. Any advice, tips? I really want to get this right. So, wow, I thought he gave some pretty good information. Obviously, when I'm, talking about this right here, I have very limited information about his application. I'd love to see full application before I start making, suggestions or whatever. But he gave the key piece of advice, or the key kind of things in there is that he didn't understand the benefits and downsides to it. And one of his things he mentioned a couple times, I'm assuming it's a he, maybe a she, is that their credit. They were concerned about their credit. So they definitely need something with some credit help. So the first thing, let's talk about the benefits and downsides of an FHA loan, and then it may make sense here. The benefit of the FHA loan, you have low down payments. One of the great things about an FHA loan is rates are usually lower for an FHA or VA loan than a conventional loan, and your credit score has very little effect on your percentage rate. Now that is the number one thing. He has credit twice on the application or in the article, and assuming that it's issues with credit, FHA automatically becomes a very, very good top choice for somebody with credit issues. The downsides to an FHA loan, you must have private mortgage insurance or mortgage insurance. And also, FHA has some what's called upfront mortgage insurance premium. That's 1.75% of a loan amount. So if it's, if you got a $200,000 loan, you got 3,700, something like that, in financed mortgage insurance. Now they let you finance it. That's a good thing because you don't. It's not anything more out of pocket that you have to come up with at closing. So, um, couple things here. If you're a first time home buyer and you're saving to put money down, I'm assuming you're not got the full 20%. So you're going to have PMI on any low down payment loan that you have. So avoiding PMI is always a good thing to do, but if you can't, FHA is good as any of them to have mortgage insurance. The mortgage insurance premium was lowered a few years ago from FHA, and that's actually a pretty good premium now. Uh, the downside is it's always on that loan, and it's never going to come off that loan. But um, you know, like I say, you're not marrying this loan. You're just trying to get into the property, plant your flag, and maybe in a few years refinance it to a 15-year conventional loan or whatever and remove the PMI when you have the equity. So by going through the benefits and the downsides, I am going to say that sounds like FHA is a really good fit for this customer, just for the simple fact that one, his credit, if your credit is hurting, conventional loan is not a very good option for you. Conventional has what's called a loan level pricing adjustment that Fannie Mae puts out to all the lenders, and basically it has the whole chart is this: the higher the credit score and the more down payment you put down, the better your rate usually tends to be. When I've compared these loans, I usually put like 700 credit score. If you have a 700 or above credit score, the conventional PMI usually starts being a better deal for the homeowner at somewhere around 700, maybe 680. So that's why we always run the numbers and compare the products to see which one's a better fit for that customer. Because at 680, 700 score, conventional starts becoming a better option. Under that, you're definitely looking at FHA as one of your better options. Let me see here. I think it was in my estimation here, I would say wholeheartedly, I think they're on the right track, and FHA is a good fit. So let's jump into the comments and see what kind of madness we get out of this. The first one here, equivalent Tiger 316. Main issue is that an FHA offer isn't as strong as an offer with a conventional loan. Talk to your loan officer and your agent. Wrong. I don't agree with that at all. That's thinking like 1945 or something. And I think people say that because they think that a stricter appraisal condition. Now, you could look at it like most people that go with FHA, their credit isn't that great. So if you're taking that, you could possibly look at it that way. But basically, there's only a couple differences with FHA and conventional appraisals. The FHA has to take a picture of the crawl space and the attic. They have to see all four corners of those, where you don't as a conventional. But it's the same appraiser. Like I've done this 100 times, where it started out a conventional loan. I need to flip it to an FHA. I call the appraiser and they say, "Oh, dang, I got to go out and take pictures of the attic or the crawl space." And they don't say anything else. They don't say, "Oh, I got to go through there and see the safety inspections." All appraisers are going to have safety issues. Like if you have a safety issue, like a electrical outlet that has wires just coming out, that's going to be on any appraisal. But FHA's gotten a really bad rap over the 50 years ago about being tough on appraisals. My thing is, it's the same exact appraiser that's going out there. That is a non-issue. And if I put out a letter that says somebody's qualified with an FHA buyer, then they're qualified. That means I've went through the income and the assets of that person, and that letter is no more or less valuable than if I'd done the same thing in the loan type said conventional on somebody else's letter. the letter's going to be accurate, and it's going to say the buyer can close within a certain amount of time, and so that's just really not true with from equivalent Tiger 316. Um, it is a strong offer, in my opinion. Um,
I think
here's
that
a
they
second.
just got. Is there a chance they just got that confused with a VA loan? Is there, because that has been going around forever?
I hear the same thing occasionally about FHA. It's just died off over the last number of years. Used to hear it a lot. I don't hear it as much anymore, but obviously this person says it's the main issue. Like, it wouldn't even be an issue of number 10 on my list of issues. Like, it sure wouldn't be the main issue. Like, it's not an
Mhm.
issue at all. What's your credit score? Empty mammoth. um, I don't even know what that would mean, empty mammoth. What's your credit score? For lower credit, FHA is usually the better option versus conventional. That's good advice. Your mortgage insurance with that is going to be cheaper than the mortgage insurance for conventional, as FHA MI isn't tied to your credit score. It's a it's the same premium as anyone else getting an FHA loan. Correct. What they're saying is FHA mortgage insurance premiums are fixed, no matter what your credit score is. If you go a conventional loan and you're getting mortgage insurance with conventional, your rate is based on your credit score, and so is your mortgage insurance. Um, so if you do, this one says your mortgage insurance is going to be cheaper. That's not necessarily true. If you get like the lower loan to value you get with mortgage insurance on conventional, it goes down because the risk is way less than because conventional FHA is doing it at 97% loan to value. You can go to 85%
Mhm.
and have mortgage insurance. With conventional, it'll be a lot less, but they're mostly right in there that basically once your credit gets to a certain level, FHA becomes a very vital thing because it's not based on your credit score. Um,
Got it.
this one says we did conventional as first time buyers. My husband had an 800 score, though, so conventional was better. Um, that's not very much help for their situation, but I guess they was throwing in that they did conventional. And I don't always, conventional can be better. Conventional is not just because somebody goes conventional, it doesn't mean it's better. They could have got a lot worse terms. Um, and then somebody, that last one says, nope, NACA gives you better benefits without the restrictions. Plus, there's no credit score requirements. NACA mortgages are conventional. Um, NACA is a down payment assistance that you have to jump through all these hoops to be required. So I don't know why they say without the restrictions. They have more restrictions than everybody on the face of the planet. So I don't pay that one much thought there. But had some decent advice and old advice. Overall, I think this person would benefit greatly from an FHA use, and I think it would be a great start to plant their flag. Um, the only option, like I was thinking about this guy. If it was somebody coming to me, the only option I would I would consider, I would ask this person, especially with the way the market is today, I'd be saying, what about fixing your credit, and opening up some other options. If it takes 3 months or 4 months, we're in a position now where would they be better off buying in 3 or 4 months? They definitely could be. Um, so, I would definitely look at some options of seeing if they could fix their credit to open up some more conventional options later down the road if they weren't in a hurry right now. But other than that, the guy or gals in a pretty good spot. They've saving their down payment. FHA is a great option.
And that's Rodney's riff. Good job on that,
Boom.
man. I wonder what the rest of that song's like. Yeah, the couple of thoughts on on your riff was that was really an important point, that in the current market status, because home prices are, I think that we have evidence now that home prices are dropping. They're surely not going to be going up enough to be panicking about. And your comment, I thought, was really smart. Can somebody take a 2 or 3 months, 3 or 4 months to improve their credit even a little more to purchase down the road? There is just, if you're a home buyer, there's no reason to feel rushed or hurried today, like we've talked about. I thought that was really smart of you to say that if you've got time to fix credit, if that's the deal, a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a different market. It's, we are not multiple offer situations and everything's flying off the shelf. Um, I'm kind of spoiled, so I always think, my or my instant gratification is off the charts, right? So, everything's now. So, it's hard for me to say something because if I went and found a house that I loved, right, and I was like, man, this house is perfect for me or whatever, I would want to buy it under FHA and then buy something else for better terms and not like that house is good. Like if I'd
Right.
seen my 1 in a million, then I might do that. But other than that, I would be waiting to enter the game.
Yep. That's really smart. Can I ask you a question on one of the other articles that came with
Hey,
Reddit?
it's your podcast.
It's our podcast. Unless you're saying, I don't want no part of that. Okay, so here's the comment that was made, or the question, and it was, how can I keep my current home without my spouse? Sometimes when there's discord in a home and you've got a loan, yeah, somebody has to buy somebody else out and that kind of stuff. Do you have any insight on how that works?
Yes. There's a lot to it. I do have a loan officer on my team that has taken some courses in regards to divorce situations. You got some kind of certification with this. The first thing comes to me. It's like they're going to usually come to me with a directive from a judge and says somebody's got to be off the house within a certain amount of days, and we just have to complete that order within a certain time frame, so everybody's keeps nobody's in trouble and that sort of thing. And we actually get to treat it like it's when I'm buying a spouse out, like say me and my wife were separating and we were doing a refinance. As long as I can meet their requirements in the divorce decree, I can write my spouse a check. I could refinance and write my spouse a check, and it's just considered a rate term refinance and not a cash out. And that is a huge advantage when you're doing a cash out, because the cash out refinance, talked earlier about the loan level pricing adjustments from Fannie Mae. Loan level pricing adjustments take on all risk. They have cash out refinances, second homes, investment properties, loan to values, credit scores. So all those is just a risk factor. And once you take out that cash out refinance, it improves the pricing and gives you better loan to value. But I have to, one of the caveats is the check actually goes to the spouse getting, that's getting the money.
Right. And I assume it's given within there that single person can still afford it, as opposed to a couple
Correct.
that was both contributing to the mortgage note.
It's a brand new loan. So the person keeping it is going to obviously have to qualify for the mortgage and the payments on their own, and the value in the house is going to have to support what they've said it was and given the money too. So you can do the cash out.
Right. Yeah. I've just seen that over the years, and people talk about. Anyway, thank you for answering that. I was just curious on on how that works. And I know every situation is case by case. I get that. So, but thank you
Yeah,
for.
the divorce thing is always, the first thing some divorces are every divorce is handled differently, right? Like some of them are very amicable, and it's like, they'll bring their wife in, their wife or ex-wife into the application and say, hey, this thing's going on, we just need what's the best way to split it up, like, and then one of them will come in and hate the other one. And in all forms of life, whether it's a woman or a man, like some man might come in and hate every woman in the building because he's
Yeah.
getting a divorce. But I don't mean to laugh at it, but you know what I'm saying. It's you come in and sometimes it's amicable and sometimes it's you get one party and the other one, there's a pitchfork waiting to be thrown at both of them. So it's
there's those, there's those ones where you can talk to me through my lawyer. Great. Thanks a lot.
yes, yeah, and so it is what it is. But yeah, it's the court documents is usually the biggest trick in the cash out refinance. It turns it into a rate term, and I like that rule. It's a bad situation for a family to be busting up a home, and at least they get to buy out the other partner's equity without an additional 1.5% cost to it.
Yeah. Yeah. At least it's doable. And that's the reason I brought that up is one of the things that I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed this, but probably you wouldn't be paying attention to it. I don't know why you should. I don't know where I was going. I wandered off. What the heck was that? But what I've noticed recently in the housing market is there's a lot more auctions than there used to be. A lot more auctions. And I see that in my Facebook feed and my Instagram feed. I mean, I'm not following any auctioneers. Hi, Ange. Um, I've just seen more and more auctions. And part of that is I'm convinced is the hot market hangover. We talked about that in the last article, where people think that they value they're probably looking at a Zestimate.
Yeah,
That's oh, you've been looking at Zestimates, haven't you? Yeah, shouldn't I? No.
yeah.
And that's where the auctions, because they run out of time. So, but I've got a couple of stories. So let's jump into this next article. Thank you for that, Rodney. Thank you very much. Affordability nationally improves 4.4%. Here's the deal on affordability. And Rodney touched on this earlier. In order for affordability to improve, there's got to be some crummy stuff going on in the market. Our first article was about housing is in the dumps. It sounds bad, but the benefactor to that are home buyers. That's our capitalistic system. And so I'm going to read a little bit of this, and as I go through it, I'm going to tell a couple real world stories, real stuff that's going on. If you're a home buyer and if you're a home seller, you can extrapolate from that what to take away from this. So the title of the article, you can see there, affordability nationally improves 4.4% as supply accumulates in many markets. In our area, we are the listings are increasing pretty amazing, in an amazing number now. Affordability nationally improved 4.4% in April. Seems like a forever ago, but it takes that long for the information to come out. As mortgage rates fell, nominal house prices slowed, and household income improved, all helping boost affordability aside from a 4-month period at the end of 2024. This marks the greatest annual increase of affordability since 2020, according to the Real House Price Index. That's twice that 2020 has been invoked. Many buyers remain sidelined, struggling to make the payment to paycheck math work, so even modest improvements can make a difference. But beneath the national headline, affordability trends vary sharply across regions, driven by differences in the market dynamics, specifically months of supply, a metric which reflects both inventory levels and the pace of sales. I'm going to just read a minute and then tell you a couple of stories. In a recent analysis, the months of supply measures the time it would take to deplete the inventory of homes for sale at a current sales rate at a given period of time, I might add. This metric helps determine whether the market favors buyers or sellers. Generally, Higher months of supply puts downward pressure on prices, while lower months of supply tends to accelerate price appreciation. I'm going to pause there for a minute. We're in a place now, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, but I'm in the field and I'm the guy that writes, just like Rodney. I write and I read the contracts and I negotiate with real world sellers, agents, to tell you this story. And we are just beginning this phase of, now it seems like my Google, I get Google alerts, and that's where I get a lot of my articles from. And what's going on now, it's saturated with the housing market is slow. The housing market is in the dumps. It's on. And like every Google alert I get, and I get a lot of them every day, that's the theme, that things are going slower. It didn't used a couple of months ago, it wasn't that prominent, but now it is. So here's what I want you to understand. Going to tell two stories. I'm going to be non-specific so that it's impossible to identify things. There was a particular property that was on the market. It needed work. It was in the Nashville area. And it was in the market, on the market, had been pressed almost 3 months. And they had gone through, they started at one price. Not going to be specific. Not going to be specific, but it started high and they started to go through their price reductions. Well, the thing that I've always taught buyers, and these particular buyers are very savvy anyway, we've been working together for years, and so they already know this rule. As days on market pile up, more and more stress on the seller means that you can negotiate for a lower price. If somebody puts a house on the market and it's got 0 to 5 days on the market, the home seller, this is going to sound really mean, but the seller is going to be really optimistic that they're going to get their price. And so if you try to negotiate in that first week, by 5% or whatever it might be, they're going to say, nope, we're going to do better than that. They'll just reject it. They might counter, but if it's early on, they have hope. So that happens. As it gets to 1 month, they start to see the writing on the wall. They start to get that wake-up call that maybe the price is too high. 2 months, they're kind of doing that. They'll lower the price, but I'll lower it 10 grand, but that's it. 45 days. I don't need to go any lower than that. Then it hits 60 days. And the agent comes back and says, hey, we're going to have to hit that again, and then they're starting to wake up. In our particular case, we were able to offer and win a bid that was $20,000 less than the price. And to be honest, I was expecting a counter. Didn't happen. They were like, okay, we're good. And I'm not laughing. I'm just saying it's a big win for the buyers. Big, it was a big win. So that's story number one, that the rule of thumb holds. The higher days on market, at some point a seller goes, it's worth taking a haircut to get done with this thing. That's ultimately what it is. I mean, you've seen that all the time, haven't you, Rodney, over the years? Whoops. Did you mute yourself?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
How many days or about how many days on the market without giving it away?
90.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you've seen that before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I told you a story last time that somebody had priced it way too high, and then they didn't even drop it down a little bit. They just lowered it $100,000, and then it started a bidding war. I was like, that's it. It was a $500,000, $600,000 house, so the percentage wasn't,
Yeah. So that's one side. If you're the home buyer, if you're looking for a deal, I'm telling you, start with the ones that have been on the market for a while. Most of the time, people will say, but that's because nobody wants the house. Well, there may be a combination. It could be it's clearly priced too high because everything sells at the right price. And it could be condition. It just depends on your tolerance on how much to fix things up. Everybody has a different tolerance level, and that usually translates into resources. How many dollars do you have to fix up a property, you know? So it's a combination of that. Higher days on market, lower prices are going to be accepted. That's I'm just telling you. The second story is I've got buyers currently right now. What a wonderful couple! They're excited. They're jacked. They're ready. You know, they're ready to go. And my rule of thumb on for first time home buyers is there's only one rule that breaks all other rules, and that is if you find what is, hey Philip, how you doing, buddy? If you find a house that is your dream house, that breaks all the other rules. Because if you find a house that works just perfect for you, you can ignore everything else. But if you're in the search for a house and you're looking for that really good one, what these folks are going through is they're finding a bunch of properties on the market that fits their criteria. Okay. All right. I see Angie's comment there. Might come back to that. But they're looking at a bunch of properties that are all qualified. They all fit. And the other day we went out, we looked out at 5 properties. And the first one, total wreck. But it was in the right size, right price range. And why they priced it like that, I have no idea. The second, third, and fourth one, beautiful, nice houses. They were nice houses, those 3 of those. The fourth one was a absolute wow. I've never seen anything so bad in all my life. I mean, there was a hole in the deck, the size, it was 3 feet in the deck, hole in the deck, you know? It was just terrible. And it was priced $15,000 higher than all these other ones. What I'm trying to teach these kids at this particular point is if one of these is your dream house, let's get it. But don't be in such a rush to find that, look, there's one that this one might work. Because what'll happen is there's going to be houses that churn through it, and next week there's going to be more houses. And what I'm trying to teach them is you don't need to be in a rush. You can actually wait a little bit, be a bit patient, and let the right house come to you. I mean, I'm telling you, you can do that. And the reason that I kind of teach that idea is that sometimes the right house makes all the difference. I've had people in the past, they would kind of get in a hurry because that was the first house that came along that actually kind of checked most of the boxes, or at least 2 out of 5. And they like think that's a win. Well, I've been doing this so long. It's like, what you're looking for will be available. I promise. You just got to be patient with it. And I mean, have you ever seen that happen where, and you've mentioned before, where people can kind of get in too much of a rush and what's the word I'm looking for? Compromise too much?
Yes, I'm not. See, I'm not on the house side very much to where I don't get in
Yeah.
the decision making of the house. But I do notice that if somebody ever tells me they're 3 to 6 months out, I know that means as soon as they find something that could mean 30 days. That 3 to 6 months out means immediately to me when I hear that. I'm like, so you're fixing to buy next week and you just don't know it
Yeah.
yet. As soon as they find something, they're going. So.
I figure as soon as we hit probably, because the way I look at it is data points for me and my new buyers. You're learning about the market. If I do my job right, the buyer would become as educated in the real world about the houses that are being offered in their market. They'll be better than me. Because they're paying attention to all the details. And once we hit 6 or 8 houses and we've seen what qualifies, what boxes it checks, that kind of stuff, then they'll know for sure when that right house comes along. And that's the only thing I'm trying to teach them is
Yeah.
don't be in so much of a rush that you put a contract on a house and you go, oh, the next one that comes available is the actual one. So
That's good advice.
it's an exciting time. If you're a buyer, you're going to be able to save money, just like the story I told. And you can do that on houses that are 20 days old or 30 days old. You can save, you can bargain now. You can do that. Now here's Angie's comment on my diatribe here. It says, if my house was on the market for 2 months without a decent offer, I pulled off and wait. Okay. I
What is the average days on market for sale out there, you think?
I wonder. I'd have to look in Zillow to find that out.
I would kind of base my numbers off of, because if your average days on market are 50 days or 40 days, you got to think that,
That's normal.
yeah, you gotta, I guess you're pricing it at the 40-day mark. Cause I always look at, like, what is my price to sell it right now? And what should I list it at? I mean, there's always a couple different prices, I think, for your house.
Oh God, oh absolutely. The rule of thumb that I learned from Terry DeSelms it's always works, and I mean for decades. It's just such an amazing formula when people are trying to get a sense of how's my house doing. Have we priced it right? Is it good condition? That kind of stuff. Here's a rule of thumb that Terry always taught: when you put a house on the market, if nobody comes, it's way too high. It's way too high, and that number could be 50,000 or 100,000, like you're telling Rodney. And I mean, when you're just getting started, it's a little bit harder to tell. But it's way too priced because nobody's coming. But then when you get it priced to the point, it may take a couple of reductions. When you start getting showings, when people start showing up with positive reviews, I mean, there's always going to be those jerks out there that think that they're going to beat you out of a deal by being mean. Yeah, there's just those people. But when they're positive reviews, but no offers come, when you get showings, but no offers, you're just off a little bit. I mean, and it depends. If it's $1 million house, you're off by 50. If it's a $500,000 house, you're off by 20, something like that. And so that's how you tell. It's the human interest, the human engagement with your listing. Because if your house just sits and nobody's coming and you're wondering what's wrong,
Right.
the market is speaking clearly to you. So
yes.
Anyway, so affordability, that's it for this week. But the good news is for buyers is that affordability seems to be coming back and it's spreading. I mean, I've got other articles that talk about the different states that are happening, because once it gets hold, like in Florida or Texas, those are the two real obvious ones. Once that starts to spread, it starts to spread across the country. That's what happens with nationwide statistics. So it's going to be good. It's going to be a good summer, but got to see what the rates do.
That's right.
So what else is new? Anything?
Angie's days on market was 22. So if days on market, we'll jump into that. I'll ask you, Andy, if days on the market was 22 days, that meant I would, if I was a seller in that area in 22 days, if it's normal, I should have a contract that's priced right and everything's
correct.
So
if
you went 30, so once you start going 30, 35 days, you need to look at a price reduction. Something like that, depending on offers and showings.
Yeah. 22, I believe you. That just seems really fast. I mean, wow. I'll do research on that. I'll get back to you. Just doing my research. That seems really fast. Have a walkaway number I need to reach, and that less than that. Hey,
yeah.
Set up your guardrails. Here's the one thing you can be reasonably certain of, though your time horizon is going to be different now. If you need a higher price for your house and time isn't an issue, based on history, I can almost guarantee that you set that price and at some time in the future, it'll hit. Now, these days, if the increase in prices is running 1 or 2%, it's going to take a while, depending on how you've done that. But you can do that. You can create a walkaway number for that. Just remember that number changes on the other side when you're buying too. So just kind of have to remember that balances out a little bit. Good for you. Be strong, my friend. That was fun. I'm wiped. Any final thoughts there, Rodney?
No,
Did you say hi to Philip?
I haven't said hi to anybody. What's up, Philip? There he is, the man. And Angie Madcat. Wonder how she come up with that Madcat name.
I don't know. Someday maybe we'll find out when we do the lunch that we've been threatening for a while now. Rodney, I can't thank you enough, man. That riff was really good. Thanks for taking my question on that unprepared. That was really good. I think that's it. See you next week.
Right. See you
Bye.
next week.